Go find another table. This one's for family, not charity cases. Natalie's voice rang through the elegant dining room of Belmont's, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants. Laughter erupted around the table. My son Marcus, my daughter Linda, and Natalie's parents all joining in like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. I stood there holding my worn purse, my face burning with humiliation as other diners turned to stare. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting warm light on the white tablecloths and crystal glasses, but I felt cold inside. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me where you're from and what time it is for you. Now let me tell you everything. My name is Sophia, and I'm 68 years old. I've lived with this treatment for the past 5 years, ever since my son Marcus married Natalie. 5 years of being reminded I was a burden, that I was too old, that I was in the way. The only person who ever saw through Natalie's act was my best friend Eleanor, a brilliant businesswoman I'd known for 40 years, who was sitting at the far end of the table with a strange expression on her face. "Natalie, that's enough," I said quietly, trying to maintain some dignity. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," Linda chimed in, waving her manicured hand dismissively. "We're just teasing. You know how Natalie is." I knew exactly how Natalie was. At 35, she'd perfected the art of making me feel worthless while maintaining the facade of being the perfect daughter-in-law. Since marrying Marcus, she'd convinced him to move me out of the family home my late husband Richard had left to both of us. She got the master bedroom redecorated, threw out my furniture, and had me relegated to a tiny apartment across town. She got control of the household finances. I got a monthly allowance from what was rightfully half mine. "Sit down, Sophia," Marcus ordered. "You're making a scene." I sat, swallowing the protest rising in my throat. This dinner was supposed to celebrate Natalie's latest business deal, some boutique she was opening with money from the family estate. My late husband's estate. They were always helping Natalie with our money. When I'd asked to use some of the estate funds to repair my apartment's leaking roof last year, Natalie had laughed and told Marcus I was being dramatic. I'd paid for it myself with my small pension. The evening dragged on with conversation flowing around me like I wasn't there. Natalie bragged about her new Range Rover. Linda discussed her upcoming spa vacation. Everyone beamed with pride, asking questions, offering congratulations. When I tried to mention the part-time consulting work I'd been doing, a contract worth $15,000 that I was proud of at my age, Natalie cut me off. "That's nice, Sophia. Marcus, tell everyone about your promotion." By the time dessert arrived, I'd retreated into myself, the familiar numbness settling over me. This was my role in the family now, the burden, the old woman they kept around out of obligation, the one they tolerated but never valued. Then the waiter approached with the check. My stomach dropped as he placed the leather folder directly in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What's this?" I asked. Natalie's laugh was sharp and bright. "Oh, didn't we mention? You're paying tonight. Consider it your contribution to the family since you're always taking and never giving." Taking. The word came out strangled. "I've never asked you for anything. The money Marcus gives you every month, the family events we include you in, the holidays." Natalie ticked off items on her fingers. "We give you everything, Sophia. The least you can do is buy us dinner." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The total made my vision blur. $3,850. They'd ordered the most expensive wines, multiple appetizers, premium steaks, lobster tails. Linda had ordered 3 desserts just because she could. "I can't afford this," I whispered. "Of course you can," Natalie said sweetly. "You just told us about your big consulting contract. $15,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now." The truth was that $15,000 was spread over 6 months of work, and most of it was already allocated to medical expenses, rent, and daily living costs. This single dinner would wipe out my emergency savings. But I couldn't make a scene. Couldn't give them more ammunition to call me difficult, ungrateful, senile. With shaking hands, I pulled out my credit card and placed it in the folder. The waiter whisked it away, and I forced myself to smile, to sip my water, to pretend this wasn't devastating me. Natalie was already talking about their upcoming vacation to Tuscany. Marcus and Linda were planning to join them. Nobody asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the waiter returned with my card and receipt, I signed with numb fingers. $3,850 for the privilege of being humiliated by people who were supposed to love me. Well, that was lovely, Linda said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. Same time next month. Next month. They expected this to become a regular thing. I opened my mouth to protest, to finally say enough was enough, when a voice cut through the chatter. Just a moment, please. Everyone fell silent. Eleanor, who'd been quiet all evening, was standing at her end of the table. At 70, she still commanded attention, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture straight as a rod. Something in her expression made my chest tighten. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor had always been different from everyone else in my life. While my children treated me like a burden after Richard died, she'd been the one who called every week, who remembered my birthday, who asked about my dreams and actually listened. She was also the wealthiest person I'd ever known, a self-made billionaire who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. But lately, she'd been quieter, watching. I'd noticed her observing family gatherings with an intensity that made me wonder what she was thinking. Eleanor, what is it? Linda asked, irritation creeping into her voice. We were just about to leave. Sit down, all of you. Eleanor's voice carried an authority that made even Marcus straighten in his chair. I have something to say, and you're going to listen. Natalie rolled her eyes but stayed seated. Marcus checked his phone under the table. Linda exchanged confused glances with Natalie's parents. Eleanor's gaze swept across each of them before landing on me. Something flickered in her eyes. Sadness maybe, or disappointment in everyone else. I've been watching this family for years, she began, her voice steady but cold. Watching how you treat Sophia, how you've always treated her since Richard died. Eleanor, really? Linda protested. This isn't the time. Be quiet. The command was so sharp that my daughter actually obeyed. I'm 70 years old, and I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy, about where my money should go when I'm gone. The table went very still. Marcus's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down. Natalie's smug expression faltered. We all know how this works, Eleanor continued. The bulk of my estate was supposed to go to various charities and distant relatives. That's what the current will says. I watched Natalie's face register confusion, then calculation. She hadn't been counting on Eleanor's money, but now she was clearly interested. But I've had my lawyer draw up a new will. Eleanor pulled an envelope from her purse. Signed and notarized yesterday. The silence was suffocating. You can't be serious, Marcus said. You're changing your will because of what? A stupid joke. A joke. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. I've watched you all mock and belittle Sophia for 5 years. I've watched you exclude her, humiliate her, treat her like she's worthless. And tonight you made her pay for your excess while you laughed about it. We were just having fun, Natalie protested, but her voice wavered. Fun. Eleanor repeated the word like it tasted foul. You think cruelty is fun. You think making someone feel worthless is entertainment. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Eleanor walked slowly around the table until she stood beside me. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder. Sophia is the only person at this table who's shown true character, she said. She's worked hard her entire life. Raised 2 children while building a career. Lost her husband and somehow kept going despite your best efforts to break her spirit. She's kind, talented, and resilient. Eleanor, you're being dramatic, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Eleanor's eyebrows rose. Marcus, when was the last time you asked your mother about her life? Really asked and actually listened to the answer. My son's mouth opened and closed. Linda, have you ever acknowledged your mother's accomplishments? Ever thanked her for the sacrifices she made raising you? My daughter stared at her plate. Natalie, Have you spent even one day treating Sophia like family instead of an inconvenience? My daughter-in-law's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Eleanor looked at each of them, her disappointment evident. You've all failed spectacularly. Sophia lost her husband 5 years ago, and instead of supporting her through her grief, you've spent those years taking advantage of her, stealing from her, and making her feel like a burden. The weight of her words settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. Wait staff hovered at a distance, sensing the drama. So here's what's going to happen, Eleanor said, her voice gaining strength. My entire estate, every dollar, every property, every investment, is going to Sophia. The explosion was immediate. What? Natalie shrieked, jumping to her feet. That's insane. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Eleanor, think about what you're saying. Linda pleaded. You're talking about billions of dollars. Sophia doesn't need that much money. Stop. Eleanor's command silenced them again. Sophia needs security. She needs independence. She needs to never worry about money or depend on ungrateful children ever again. She's earned this through being a better person than all of you combined. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Billions of dollars. Eleanor's entire fortune. It was impossible, unreal, too enormous to comprehend. You're being manipulated, Marcus said desperately. Mom must have done something. Said something. Sophia has done nothing but survive your abuse, Eleanor cut him off. And that ends tonight. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Harrison, it's Eleanor. Yes. File the new will immediately. Make sure it's ironclad. And prepare the trust documents for Sophia. My family's faces ranged from shock to fury to disbelief. Natalie looked like she might actually faint. Marcus's face had gone purple. Linda seemed to age a decade in seconds. This isn't over, Natalie hissed at me. We'll contest it. We'll fight you in court. Try it, Eleanor said calmly. I've made sure everything is completely legal. I'm of sound mind, as a medical evaluation from this morning confirms. She'd planned this. Every detail. The explosion that followed was like nothing I'd ever witnessed. Natalie lunged across the table, her face contorted with rage. Marcus grabbed her arm, but his own anger was barely contained. You manipulative witch. Natalie snarled at me. You planned this. You've been playing the victim this whole time. Enough. Eleanor stepped between us. Sophia has done nothing wrong. She didn't even know about this until now. It was true. I was still reeling, my mind unable to grasp what had just happened. Billions of dollars. Eleanor's entire estate. Everything she'd built over her lifetime. Why are you doing this? Linda's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. We're her children. Her blood. And you should be ashamed of how you've acted, Eleanor replied, her voice softer but still firm. Richard left Sophia half of everything. Half of the house, half of the investments, half of his life insurance. And what did you do? You convinced Marcus to push her out of her own home. You let Natalie control the finances. You've been systematically stealing from her for 5 years. The air left my lungs. What? Eleanor turned to me, her expression sad. I had my lawyers investigate, Sophia. The estate Richard left was supposed to be split 50-50 between you and Marcus as co-beneficiaries. But Natalie had the documents altered. She's been controlling all of it, giving you a pittance while spending the rest. I felt like I was falling. My own son. My own daughter had let this happen. That's not true, Marcus said, but his voice was weak. I have the original documents, Eleanor said. And I have proof of the forgery. Natalie changed the beneficiary paperwork 6 months after Richard died, when Sophia was still deep in grief and not paying attention. Natalie's face went white. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. My lawyers have been building a case for months. That's fraud, Natalie. That's elder abuse. That's theft of approximately $1.8 million over 5 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. $1.8 million. That was mine. Richard had left it for me, to take care of me, and they'd stolen it. We can work this out, Marcus tried desperately. Mom, please. We can fix this. There's nothing to work out, Eleanor said. The decision is made. My lawyers have everything in order. The trust is established. Sophia will receive everything when I pass, with immediate access to certain accounts starting tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word hung in the air. This wasn't some future promise. This was real, immediate, happening. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. You're making a huge mistake. Mom doesn't know how to handle that kind of money. Sophia managed a household, raised 2 children, worked a full career, and has been surviving on scraps for 5 years, Eleanor interrupted. She's more financially responsible than any of you have ever been. I found my voice, shaky and uncertain. Eleanor, I don't understand. Why now? She turned to me, and her expression softened. Because I've watched you suffer long enough, my dear friend. And because I'm dying. The world tilted. What? Ovarian cancer, stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, probably less. She said it so calmly, but I saw the pain beneath the composure. I found out 3 months ago, and I've spent that time getting my affairs in order, making sure my legacy goes to someone who deserves it. Tears blurred my vision. Eleanor was dying. My best friend, the one person who'd truly seen me, was leaving. Oh, don't cry, Sophia. She pulled me into a hug, and I breathed in her familiar perfume, lilac and vanilla. This isn't sad. This is justice. Around us, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen noise had died down. Everyone was watching this family implode in real time. You can't be serious about this, Linda tried again, desperation making her voice shrill. Eleanor, please think about Sophia's grandchildren. Think about the family legacy. I'm thinking about it, Eleanor said. That's exactly why I'm doing this. The family legacy should be compassion, hard work, and integrity. Sophia embodies all of that. The rest of you embody greed, cruelty, and entitlement. Natalie's hands were shaking. We'll sue. We'll prove you're not in your right mind. Good luck with that. Eleanor's smile was sharp. I have medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimony from dozens of witnesses about your treatment of Sophia over the years. My lawyer has been documenting everything for months. She'd been planning this carefully, methodically, protecting me even as her own time ran short. I want to go home, I whispered. Of course. Eleanor kept her arm around me. James is outside with the car. He'll take us both to my place. We have a lot to discuss. As we turned to leave, Marcus blocked our path. This isn't fair. We're your family, Mom. Move, Eleanor's voice was ice. Or I'll have security remove you. He stepped aside, but the hatred in his eyes made me flinch. We walked through the restaurant in silence, every eye following us. The cool Seattle air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I gulped it down, trying to steady myself. A sleek black car waited at the curb. James, Eleanor's driver of 30 years, opened the door with a knowing smile. Mrs. Sophia, welcome. James knows everything, Eleanor said as we slid into the back seat. He's been helping me plan this for weeks. The car pulled away from the restaurant, leaving my family standing on the sidewalk in shock. Through the rear window, I saw Natalie screaming something, her face twisted with rage. Marcus was on his phone, probably calling a lawyer. Linda stood with Natalie's parents, looking lost and broken. I should have felt something, guilt maybe, or fear, but all I felt was numb exhaustion mixed with a strange sense of freedom. Are you really dying? I asked Eleanor, my voice small. Yes. She took my hand, her skin paper-thin but her grip surprisingly strong. But I'm not afraid. I've lived a full life, Sophia. Built an empire, made my mark. Now I get to ensure that everything I've worked for goes to someone worthy. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted. I don't know how to be rich. I don't know how to run your companies. You'll learn, she said confidently. You're smart, hardworking, and you have good instincts. And you'll have an excellent team to guide you. I've made sure of that. The city lights blurred past the window as we drove toward her estate in Madison Park. What happens now? Now. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Now we prepare you for your new life. And we make absolutely certain that your family can never hurt you again. The next morning, I woke up in one of Eleanor's guest rooms, momentarily disoriented by the silk sheets and the view of Lake Washington through floor-to-ceiling windows. Then the memories crashed back. The restaurant. The bill. The announcement. Everything. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since I'd turned it back on. 37 missed calls from Natalie, 23 from Marcus, 19 from Linda. Dozens of texts ranging from pleading to threatening. I scrolled through them with a strange detachment. You're being selfish. Think about your grandchildren. Linda. I'll destroy you in court. You won't see a penny. Natalie. Mom, we need to talk. This can still be fixed. Marcus. Eleanor's clearly not thinking straight. Help us get her evaluated. Marcus again. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Eleanor's estate sprawled across 3 acres of prime Seattle real estate. The morning sun glinted off the lake, sailboats already dotting the water. This was mine now. Or would be soon. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Sophia, breakfast is ready, and Ms. Eleanor would like to see you in the study. I found Eleanor sitting behind an enormous mahogany desk, looking surprisingly energetic despite yesterday's revelation about her health. James stood nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit sat across from her. Sophia, this is Harrison, my attorney, Eleanor said. We need to go over some things. Harrison stood, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Mrs. Sophia, it's a pleasure. Your friend has spoken very highly of you. I sat down, feeling like I was in a dream. Harrison opened a leather portfolio and began explaining the details of the trust, the companies, the investments. Numbers that seemed impossible swam before my eyes. $2.8 billion in liquid assets. $4.5 billion in property and investments. Stakes in pharmaceutical companies, real estate developments, tech startups. The immediate access accounts activate today, Harrison explained. $8 million for your personal use while the trust is being finalized. Eleanor wanted to ensure you had resources right away. $8 million for immediate use. I felt dizzy. There's more, Eleanor said, her eyes sharp. Your family will try to contest this. They'll claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything they can think of. We need to be prepared. What can they actually do? I asked. Harrison leaned forward. Legally, not much. Ms. Eleanor has documentation proving her sound mind, including evaluations from 3 separate doctors. The will is ironclad. However, they can make the process difficult, drag it out in court, create negative publicity. Let them try, Eleanor said firmly. I've been documenting their treatment of Sophia for years. Every cruel comment, every exclusion, every incident of financial abuse. If they want a court battle, I'll bury them with evidence. My phone buzzed again. Natalie. I silenced it. There's something else you need to know, Eleanor said, and something in her tone made me tense. Something about Richard's estate that you need to hear. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? She pulled a folder from her desk drawer, sliding it across to me. When Richard died, his will was very clear. Everything was to be split 50-50 between you and Marcus. The house, the investments, the life insurance. Everything. I stared at the documents in the folder. Bank statements, legal documents, transfer records. But 6 months after his death, while you were still grieving, Natalie had documents drawn up claiming you'd agreed to relinquish your half to Marcus. She forged your signature. My hand shook as I flipped through the papers. There it was, my signature, but it wasn't my handwriting. It was close, but not quite right. She stole everything, I whispered. Everything Richard left me. Yes, Eleanor said quietly. I only discovered this myself a year ago when I started investigating after I noticed how they treated you. I've been gathering evidence since then, building a case. That's fraud, Harrison added. That's forgery and elder abuse. Between the stolen estate and the money they've taken over 5 years, they owe you approximately $2.1 million. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. My own son had let his wife steal from me. Had watched it happen. Had maybe even helped. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice breaking. Because I needed to be sure, Eleanor said gently. Needed all the documentation perfect and legal. And because, she paused, looking older suddenly, because I knew that once you learned the truth, there would be no going back. Your relationship with them, toxic as it was, would be over completely. She was right. Any tiny part of me that had hoped they still loved me, that had wondered if maybe I was being too sensitive, died in that moment. They hadn't just been cruel. They'd been criminals. What do I do? I felt lost, overwhelmed. You let me handle it, Eleanor said. Harrison has already filed a civil suit against Marcus and Natalie for fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of estate funds. With interest over 5 years, they owe you approximately $2.1 million. They have 90 days to pay. My phone exploded with calls again. This time it was Marcus. Answer it, Eleanor said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. Mom. Marcus's voice was desperate. Mom, please, we need to talk. Eleanor isn't thinking clearly. She seems perfectly clear to me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is insane. You can't possibly think you deserve her entire fortune. You've been part of our family for 40 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved. The moment money is involved. I repeated. You mean like the $2.1 million you and Natalie stole from me? The estate your father left me that Natalie forged documents to take. Silence. Then, I don't know what lies she's been telling you. Bank records don't lie, Marcus. Harrison has all the documentation. Natalie forged my signature. You both stole from me. Linda's voice came through the phone, shrill with panic. That money was for the family, for keeping the house running, for all of us. Your father left me half of everything so I would be taken care of, I said. You gave me an allowance while spending the rest on vacations and cars and Natalie's boutiques. You're being ungrateful, Marcus tried. We gave you a place in our lives. You gave me crumbs from my own table, I said. The words felt powerful, liberating. You made me feel worthless every single day. And you did it while spending money that was rightfully mine. We'll fight this, Natalie's voice cut in, sharp and threatening. We'll take you to court. Please do, Eleanor said calmly. I'd love to see you explain the forged documents to a judge. Explain how you stole from a grieving widow. The call ended abruptly. They'd hung up, probably to call their own lawyer. Harrison's hand rested on my shoulder. Mrs. Sophia, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand, you hold all the cards here. They have no legal ground to stand on. They'll try anyway, I said. Of course they will, Eleanor agreed. But they'll lose. And when they do, you'll never have to see them again unless you choose to. 3 days later, the story hit the media. Somehow, and I suspected Natalie was behind it, the details of Eleanor's will change had leaked to the press. Billionaire leaves fortune to best friend instead of family, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters wanting statements. I'd moved into Eleanor's estate temporarily, unable to face my apartment where my family knew the address. James had retrieved my things, and I was living in a strange bubble of luxury and chaos. The public reaction was divided. Some praised Eleanor for rewarding loyalty and character. Others called me a manipulative gold digger who'd seduced an elderly woman for her fortune. The comment sections were brutal. She probably poisoned the old woman's mind against her own family. Gold digger alert. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. Good for Eleanor. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. That widow is going to blow through billions in a year. Watch. I tried to ignore it, but the words burrowed under my skin. Was I wrong to accept this? Should I have refused Eleanor's gift? Stop reading those, Eleanor said, finding me hunched over my laptop in the library. She looked frailer than she had days ago, the cancer clearly progressing. People will always have opinions. Let them talk. They're calling me terrible things, I said. They called me terrible things when I built my first company, she replied, settling into the chair beside me. Said a woman couldn't succeed in pharmaceuticals. Said I was too aggressive, too ambitious. I proved them wrong. She took my hand, her grip weaker now. You'll prove them wrong too, Sophia. Not by defending yourself, but by being exactly who you are, kind, hardworking, dignified. That afternoon, Harrison arrived with news. Marcus and Natalie have officially filed to contest the will. They're claiming diminished capacity and undue influence. Let me see, Eleanor said. Harrison handed over the legal documents. I read over her shoulder, my anger building with every word. They claimed I'd isolated Eleanor from her other friends, that I'd manipulated a sick elderly woman, that I'd taken advantage of her declining mental state for years. This is ridiculous, I said. I didn't even know about the cancer until that night. We have evidence proving otherwise, Harrison assured me, including testimony from medical staff, friends, business associates. They're grasping at straws. But something in Harrison's expression made me nervous. What aren't you telling me? He exchanged a glance with Eleanor. Natalie has hired a private investigator. They're digging into your background, looking for anything they can use against you. My stomach dropped. There's nothing to find. I've lived a quiet life. We know that, Eleanor said. But they'll try to create something. Twist innocent situations. Take things out of context. As if on cue, my phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sophia, it's so good to finally reach you. The voice was unfamiliar, syrupy sweet. I'm Amanda Reed from Seattle Scene magazine. I'd love to chat about your relationship with Eleanor Chen. No comment, I said, moving to hang up. Wait. I just have a few questions about the allegations. What allegations? About your consulting work. There are questions about where you really got those clients. Some people are suggesting Eleanor funded your entire consulting business years ago. That you've been planning this takeover for a long time. My blood ran cold. That's not true. I built my consulting practice myself. Can you prove that? Do you have documentation? I hung up, my hands shaking. They're trying to create a narrative, Harrison said grimly. That you've been grooming Eleanor for years. That everything you've accomplished was really her money. But it wasn't. I have client contracts, payment records. We know, Eleanor soothed. And we'll prove it. But Sophia, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. By evening, social media was flooded with theories. Anonymous accounts, probably my family, were spreading rumors. That I'd abandoned my children when Richard died, I'd been forced out of my own home. That my consulting business was failing, it was modestly successful. That I'd had affairs with wealthy men to fund my lifestyle, I'd barely dated since Richard's death. The cruelest rumor was that I'd somehow caused Richard's death to access his estate. My husband had died of a sudden heart attack, but facts didn't matter to internet trolls. I closed my laptop, feeling sick. Mrs. Sophia. James appeared at the library door. There are reporters at the gate. Quite a few of them. I walked to the window overlooking the front of the estate. News vans lined the street. Cameras pointed at the house. My private life was now public spectacle. This is what they want, I said quietly. They want me to crack, to do something that makes me look bad. Then don't give them the satisfaction, Eleanor said. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were still fierce. We fight this the right way, with truth, with evidence, with dignity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from the past 5 years. Natalie telling me the master bedroom was too much house for me. Marcus saying I should be grateful for the monthly allowance. Linda rolling her eyes when I tried to share stories about Richard. Being uninvited from family holidays because the house would be too crowded. Every moment of exclusion, every casual cruelty, all building to this. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. We'll destroy you. N. Natalie, threatening me from a burner phone. I screenshot it and sent it to Harrison. Evidence. Eleanor had taught me well. The next morning brought a new development. Linda showed up at the estate, somehow talking her way past security. I found her in the foyer arguing with James. I need to see my mother, she was saying. Please, it's important. It's okay, James, I said, though my heart was racing. I'll talk to her. Linda looked terrible, no makeup, her clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. Nothing like the polished woman I'd seen at the restaurant. Mom, please, she said. We need to fix this. The family is falling apart. The family fell apart a long time ago, I said. You're just noticing now because money's involved. That's not fair. I know we weren't, I know we could have been better to you, but this. She gestured around the estate. Cutting us out completely. That's too far. Too far. My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. Linda, you let Natalie kick me out of my own home. You knew your father left me half of everything, and you said nothing when she took control of it all. You forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. You uninvited me from Christmas because Natalie said I was bringing down the mood while I was grieving your father. Linda's face went white. I didn't know about the forged documents. I swear. You didn't know because you never asked, I said. The words poured out, years of pain finally finding voice. You want to fix the family. There's nothing to fix. You chose Natalie over me. Marcus chose Natalie over me. You all chose comfort and money over doing what was right. Mom, please. Get out. My voice was steady now, cold. Get out of this house and don't come back. You're making a mistake, Linda said, tears streaming down her face. When Eleanor's gone, you'll have no one. I already had no one, I said. At least now I'll have resources to build an actual life. James escorted Linda out. Through the window, I watched my daughter walk to her car, shoulders slumped, sobbing. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt, but a sad acknowledgement of what could have been if they'd chosen differently. That afternoon, Harrison called an emergency meeting. His expression was grave. Natalie's legal team has found something, he said. Or rather, they claim to have found something. They're alleging that you coerced Eleanor into changing her will by threatening to cut off contact. They're trying to paint you as manipulative, someone who exploited a lonely woman's friendship. That's insane, I said. Eleanor and I have been friends for 40 years. Since before Richard died. We know that, but they're filing a motion to delay the will proceedings pending an investigation. It's a stall tactic, but it could work. Eleanor's hand slammed on the desk, startling us both. Despite her frailty, anger gave her strength. Absolutely not. Harrison, file an emergency motion to expedite. I want this settled before. She didn't finish the sentence. Before she died. Eleanor, you should rest, Harrison began. I'll rest when this is done, she snapped. My best friend is being attacked by vultures masquerading as family. We end this now. Harrison nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping away to make calls. Eleanor turned to me, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion evident in her face. Sophia, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. About the stolen estate, the forged documents, the abuse, everything. But I need you to be there with me. The world needs to see you, hear from you directly. Terror gripped me. I can't. I'll say something wrong. You'll be perfect, she said firmly. Because you'll tell the truth. That's all you need to do. That night, I barely slept again. I kept rehearsing what I might say, then abandoning it. How do you sum up 5 years of pain in a few minutes? How do you make strangers understand? The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Eleanor's downtown office. When James drove us there, the media presence was overwhelming. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, a crowd of onlookers documenting everything on their phones. Harrison had prepared a statement, but when I looked at Eleanor, really looked at her, I saw how much this was costing her. She was dying, using her last reserves of strength to fight for me. The conference room was packed. Cameras rolling, lights bright, the air thick with anticipation. Eleanor sat beside me at a long table, Harrison on her other side. She looked small but unbreakable. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice surprisingly strong. "I'm here to address the rumors and allegations surrounding my will and my dear friend Sophia." She laid it all out. The documentation of abuse. The forged documents stealing Sophia's inheritance. The systematic financial exploitation. Years of emotional manipulation. She showed bank records, medical evaluations proving her sound mind, testimony from witnesses. It was methodical, devastating, irrefutable. "Some have suggested Sophia manipulated me," Eleanor said, her gaze sweeping the room. "The truth is the opposite. Her own family manipulated her. They took a grieving widow and used her as their personal ATM. They stole her inheritance, kicked her out of her home, and made her feel worthless. Despite all of that, Sophia rebuilt her life. She started a consulting practice. She maintained her dignity and kindness. She became everything they are not." Then she gestured to me. "Sophia would like to say a few words." My mouth went dry. Every eye in the room was on me. I could see the judgment, the curiosity, the skepticism. I cleared my throat. "I don't know what to say that Eleanor hasn't already said." My voice was shaky at first, then steadied. "I never wanted this attention. I never wanted to be rich or famous or involved in legal battles." I paused, gathering my courage. "I just wanted my children to love me after their father died. I wanted a daughter-in-law who treated me with basic respect. I wanted to grieve in peace in the home my husband and I built together. I wanted to belong somewhere." I looked directly at the cameras. "I know some of you think I'm a gold digger, that I manipulated a dying woman for money. But I didn't even know about the inheritance until that night at the restaurant. I didn't know Eleanor was sick. I didn't know about the forged documents until 3 days ago. All I knew was that, once again, my family was humiliating me and forcing me to pay for the privilege." Tears threatened, but I pushed through. "Eleanor is giving me her fortune because she believes in who I am, not because I asked for it. And I'm going to honor that trust by being exactly who she sees, someone who helps people, builds things, and refuses to be cruel just because it's easier." The questions came fast and furious after that. Reporters shouting, cameras flashing. But Harrison fielded them expertly, and Eleanor sat beside me, her hand finding mine under the table. As we were wrapping up, Natalie burst through the doors. Security moved to stop her, but she was already shouting, "This is all lies. She's brainwashed you all." Natalie's makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. She looked unhinged. "I'm the real victim here. That manipulative old woman has stolen my family's money." The cameras swiveled to her, capturing every second of her meltdown. "Ms. Natalie," a reporter called out, "what about the allegations that you forged documents to steal Sophia's inheritance? That money was ours. We earned it by taking care of her ungrateful, senile." "You earned $2.1 million for kicking a widow out of her own home?" another reporter asked. Natalie realized her mistake too late. The cameras had caught everything, her admission, her rage, her complete lack of remorse. "Get her out of here," Harrison said to security. As Natalie was escorted out, still screaming threats, I watched the reporters frantically typing on their phones. The narrative had just shifted. Natalie had given them the villain they needed, and it wasn't me. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "Well," she said quietly, "I don't think we could have planned that better if we tried." Despite everything, I almost smiled. Natalie had destroyed herself, and she'd done it on camera for the world to see. The video of Natalie's meltdown went viral within hours. By evening, it had been viewed over 15 million times. News outlets played it on loop, dissecting every word, every unhinged expression. Social media exploded with commentary. Did she really just admit they earned money by mistreating her mother-in-law? This family is toxic. Sophia deserves everything. Natalie just destroyed her own case in under 60 seconds. Brilliant. That look on her face when she realized what she said. Priceless. The public opinion shifted overnight. What had been a divided conversation became a landslide of support for me and condemnation for my family. Memes spread. Commentary videos analyzed the situation. Legal experts weighed in, all agreeing that Natalie's admission had essentially torpedoed any chance of contesting the will. I watched it all from Eleanor's study, still processing. Walter sat across from me, looking pleased. Their legal case just collapsed, he said. Natalie's admission that they earned money by taking care of you, combined with the forged documents we have, means they have no leg to stand on. What happens now? I asked. Now their lawyers will try damage control, but it's too late. The court hearing is in 3 days. I'd be shocked if the judge doesn't rule in our favor immediately. He paused. There's also the criminal aspect. The district attorney's office has reached out. They're considering fraud and elder abuse charges against Marcus and Natalie. Criminal charges. My son and daughter-in-law could go to prison. Eleanor entered the study, moving slowly with James supporting her arm. She'd declined rapidly since the press conference, the effort having drained her reserves. But her eyes were still sharp. Don't look so worried, she said, settling into her chair. They made their choices. Now they face the consequences. Marcus is still my son, I said quietly. A son protects his mother, Eleanor said firmly. A son honors his father's wishes. What Marcus did was betray you in the worst possible way. He watched his wife steal from you and said nothing. He's no son of yours. My phone buzzed. Another message, but this one made my blood run cold. I know where you are now. This isn't over. You'll pay for ruining my life. I showed it to Harrison, who immediately made a call. I'm getting a restraining order filed today and increasing security at the estate. She's desperate, Eleanor observed. Desperate people do dangerous things. She was right. Over the next 2 days, Natalie's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at Eleanor's office building, screaming at employees. She posted long, rambling rants on social media, each one more unhinged than the last. She claimed I'd used witchcraft to manipulate Eleanor, that I was part of a conspiracy, that she was the real victim of elder abuse. Each post only made things worse for her. The public watched her self-destruct in real time, and any sympathy that might have existed evaporated. Marcus tried a different approach. He went on a local news program, presenting himself as the reasonable middle ground. Look, I think there were mistakes made on both sides, he said earnestly to the camera. Yes, maybe we weren't as attentive to my mother as we should have been after Dad died, but to cut the entire family out over misunderstandings, that seems extreme. The interviewer wasn't buying it. Mr. Marcus, are you aware that your wife forged documents to steal your mother's inheritance, money your father specifically left her? Marcus's composure cracked. That money was for the whole family. My mother benefited from it too. She was kicked out of her home and given a monthly allowance while living in a tiny apartment. How exactly did she benefit? Marcus ended the interview early, but the damage was done. The public saw through him. Linda tried yet another tactic, appealing to sympathy. She gave a tearful interview about how she'd loved me, how this was breaking her heart, how families should forgive each other. We made mistakes, Linda said, her voice breaking. What family hasn't? But to be cut off completely, to be accused of enabling theft, it's destroying us. I can barely sleep. Marcus's marriage is falling apart. Natalie is having a breakdown. All because we weren't perfect. The interviewer, the same one who'd dismantled Marcus, showed no mercy. Ms. Linda, You're describing what happened as not being perfect. But investigators have documented that you knew your mother was forced out of her home. You knew she was living on a small allowance while your family spent her inheritance. You did nothing. This goes beyond imperfection. I thought Natalie was managing things properly. I didn't know about the forgery. But you knew your mother was unhappy. You knew she was struggling. And you still chose to exclude her from family events, forget her birthday, treat her like a burden. Why? Linda had no answer. She walked out of the interview crying. The court hearing arrived on a grey Seattle morning. The courthouse was surrounded by media, protesters holding signs both for and against me, curiosity seekers hoping for a glimpse of the drama. Harrison had arranged for us to enter through a private entrance, but I could still hear the noise outside. Eleanor looked frail in her wheelchair. We'd finally convinced her to use one, but her spine was still straight, her gaze still fierce. My family was already there. Linda, Marcus, and Natalie sat at the defendant's table with their team of lawyers. Linda looked tired and defeated. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. But Natalie stared at me with pure hatred. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Parker, entered and everyone rose. This is a hearing regarding the will of Eleanor Chen and the contest filed by Marcus and Natalie, Judge Parker began. I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Counsel, your opening statements. The family's lawyer went first, a man named David who argued that Eleanor had been unduly influenced, that her illness had impaired her judgment, that the will should be set aside in favor of the previous version. Then Harrison stood. He didn't argue or plead. He simply presented facts. Bank records showing the stolen inheritance. The forged signature on the beneficiary documents. Medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors confirming Eleanor's sound mind. Documentation of the mistreatment I'd suffered. Photos, recordings, witness statements. And finally, Natalie's viral video confession. Your Honor, Harrison concluded, this is not a case of undue influence. This is a case of a woman choosing to leave her estate to someone who deserves it, and a family angry that their victim has finally escaped their control. David tried to counter, but Judge Parker cut him off. I've seen enough, she said. The evidence is overwhelming. Ms. Eleanor Chen was clearly of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documentation of abuse and financial exploitation is extensive and credible. And the admission by Natalie that the family earned money meant for Sophia essentially confirms the allegations. My heart began to race. Furthermore, Judge Parker continued, the behavior exhibited by the contesting parties during these proceedings, including threats, harassment, and public defamation, only reinforces that Ms. Chen's decision was correct. A family that truly loved Sophia would never have treated her this way, before or after the will change. Natalie stood up, unable to contain herself. You can't just. Sit down, Judge Parker commanded. Or I'll hold you in contempt. Natalie sat, but her fury was palpable. I'm ruling in favor of the will as executed, Judge Parker declared. The contest is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Marcus and Natalie to pay restitution for the stolen inheritance. $1.8 million plus interest over 5 years, totaling approximately $2.1 million. They have 90 days to pay in full. The courtroom erupted. Linda collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Natalie started screaming obscenities until bailiffs escorted her out. I sat frozen, unable to process that it was over. We'd won. Completely, decisively, irrevocably. Eleanor squeezed my hand. It's done, sweetheart. You're free. Media swarmed us as we left the courthouse, but Harrison and James created a barrier. I heard the questions being shouted. How did I feel? What would I do with the money? Did I have a message for my family? But I didn't answer. I just helped Eleanor into the car and let James drive us away. Back at the estate, Eleanor was exhausted but satisfied. I can die happy now, she said, and the words hit me like a physical blow. Don't say that, I whispered. Please. Oh, Sophia. She cupped my face with her thin hands. I'm not afraid. I got to see justice done. I got to know my fortune will be used for good. That's more than most people get. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Eleanor fade. She slipped in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, telling her about my plans for the foundation I wanted to start, something to help widows and elderly people being exploited by family members. That's perfect, she murmured during one of her clearer moments. Help others like you. Break the cycle. I will, I promised. I'll make you proud. You already have. Her smile was peaceful. You survived them, Sophia. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You kept your dignity when they tried to break you. You're everything I hoped you'd be. She died on a Tuesday morning, with me holding her hand and the sun streaming through the window. Her last words were, "Thank you for being my real family." I stayed with her for a long time after, crying for the woman who'd saved me, who'd loved me, who'd given me a future. The best friend I'd ever had. The funeral was private, just me, James, Harrison, and a few of Eleanor's close friends from her business days. My family wasn't invited, though Linda tried to crash it and was turned away by security. In the weeks that followed, the full transfer of assets was completed. I was now the sole heir to a $7.3 billion fortune. The number was still incomprehensible, but I was determined to honor Eleanor's legacy. The first thing I did was establish the Eleanor Chen Foundation for Elder Protection. Not because it sounded good or made me look charitable, but because I knew firsthand how many older people were trapped in situations like mine, exploited by their own families, too proud or afraid to ask for help. The foundation would provide legal support, counseling, emergency housing, and financial assistance for elderly people suffering abuse or exploitation by family members. The second thing I did was hire an excellent management team for Eleanor's companies. I wasn't ready to run billion-dollar corporations, but I could learn. I attended every meeting, asked questions, studied at night. Slowly, I began to understand the empire she'd built. My family's downfall was swift and brutal. Unable to pay the $2.1 million in restitution, Marcus and Natalie were forced to sell everything. The house, my house, the one Richard and I had built together, their cars, Natalie's boutique, everything of value. They moved into a cramped apartment in a rough neighborhood. Natalie faced fraud and elder abuse charges. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Marcus, as an accomplice who'd benefited from and enabled the fraud, received 3 years. Linda, who'd known about the situation but done nothing, wasn't charged criminally but faced a civil suit. She was required to pay back the money she'd received from the stolen estate, approximately $300,000. Her husband divorced her over the scandal, and last I heard, she was working 2 jobs to make the payments. But Natalie's fate was the most complete. Her viral meltdown had destroyed any chance of rebuilding her life. Her parents disowned her. Her friends abandoned her. Before going to prison, she'd tried to start several businesses, but they all failed when people recognized her name. She'd tried to reconcile with me, not out of genuine remorse, but desperate hope I'd give her money. I'd read her email once. "Sophia, I know we had our differences, but we're still family. I'm facing prison time, and I know you're doing well now. Maybe you could help with my legal fees. We could start fresh." I deleted it without responding. 6 months after Eleanor's death, I stood in the foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful building in downtown Seattle dedicated to helping people like I'd been. The walls were covered with photos of people we'd already helped, stories of escape and new beginnings. James stood beside me, having accepted a position as the foundation's operations director. "Ms. Eleanor would be proud," he said. "I hope so," I replied. My phone buzzed. Another message from my family. They never stopped trying. This one was from Marcus, who'd been released early for good behavior. "Mom, please. I've served my time. Natalie and I are divorced. I've lost everything. I know I was wrong. Can we please talk? I'm your son. I need help." I looked at the message for a long moment. Part of me, the part that remembered rocking him to sleep as a baby, teaching him to ride a bike, being so proud at his graduation, felt a twinge of pain. But then I remembered, the forged signature, the stolen money, the years of humiliation, his cold voice telling me to sit down and stop making a scene. I typed my response carefully. You were my son. But a son doesn't steal from his mother. A son doesn't let his wife forge documents and kick his widowed mother out of her home. A son doesn't stand by while his mother is humiliated and exploited. You made your choices. Now live with them. I'm donating money in your father's name to help other families avoid what happened to me. That's the only legacy you'll have from me. I hit send and blocked his number. A year later, I was featured in a business magazine, not as the widow who inherited billions, but as a CEO running multiple successful companies and a foundation that had helped over 800 elderly people escape abusive family situations. The article focused on my work, my vision, my accomplishments. There was a small mention of my family drama, but it was in the past now. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the gold digger or the manipulator. I was simply Sophia, a woman who'd survived, thrived, and chosen to help others do the same. I'd heard through acquaintances that Natalie was still in prison, her appeals having failed. That Marcus was working as a night clerk at a gas station, barely making ends meet. That Linda was bankrupt, living in a studio apartment, her expensive tastes a distant memory. Part of me, the part that remembered being a mother, being a family, felt a twinge of something. Not quite satisfaction, not quite pity, just acknowledgement that actions have consequences, that cruelty eventually circles back. My family never recovered from their fall. Natalie's reputation was permanently destroyed. Marcus's pride never allowed him to accept help from social services, keeping him perpetually struggling. Linda's connections, built on status and money, evaporated when both disappeared. They'd built their lives on a foundation of entitlement and exploitation. And when that foundation crumbled, they had nothing left to stand on. As for me, I built something lasting from the ashes of that painful past. Each person the foundation saved, each life changed, each cycle of abuse broken, that was my real inheritance from Eleanor. Not the money, but the understanding that sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't revenge, but becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And watching them destroy themselves while you're busy building something beautiful? That was simply justice taking its natural course. I stood at the window of my office, a corner suite with a view of the Seattle skyline and Puget Sound beyond. At 73, I felt more alive than I had in decades. The Eleanor Chen Foundation had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We'd helped over 5,000 elderly people escape abusive situations. We'd changed laws in 3 states regarding elder abuse. We'd funded research into financial exploitation. We'd built housing complexes specifically for vulnerable seniors. My phone rang. It was James. Mrs. Sophia, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Who? A young woman named Sarah. She says her grandmother is being exploited by her uncle and she doesn't know where else to turn. I smiled. Send her up. This was my purpose now. This was what Eleanor's gift had truly given me, not wealth, but the power to help others avoid what I'd endured. As I waited for Sarah to arrive, I glanced at the photo on my desk. Eleanor and me, taken at her 70th birthday party, both of us laughing at some joke I couldn't remember now. Thank you, my friend, I whispered to the photo. For seeing me when no one else did. For believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. For giving me not just a fortune, but a future. The door opened, and Sarah walked in, young, frightened, desperate for help. I stood and extended my hand, ready to do what Eleanor had done for me, fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. Tell me everything, I said. You're safe now. And I meant it. Because that's what Eleanor's legacy was really about. Not the billions, but the understanding that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. And I was going to spend every day of my remaining years proving that she'd chosen the right person.